Primary and Secondary Sources, brought to you by your Parkway librarians.
We're at the Grand Canyon, which scientists believe was formed 5 to 6 million years ago when the Colorado River started cutting a channel through the rock. Look how beautiful it is. This is one of the 7 wonders of the world here in Arizona. I almost couldn't believe my eyes when I saw the Grand Canyon for the first time. It truly was magnificent. I knew I had to learn as much as I could. I've been told that primary sources are a great place to begin research. But why? Primary sources give us first-hand evidence about an event. They're like clues to the past. This could be a photograph or a recording, a newspaper article, a legal document, a letter, results from an experiment, statistical data, or an artifact, such as a tool, weapon, art, clothing, dishes, a toy, a ticket, equipment, etc. A primary source is any first-hand account of the event that took place, something from that time period, or a first-hand account from someone who was there. One of the most common primary sources is a photograph, like this one here, of the Grand Canyon in the early 1900s. What do we know about this photo? What are some things that jump out at you? Maybe the colors, what the people in the photo are wearing or doing. Discuss this primary source with a partner if you can, or jot your thoughts on a piece of paper now. What do you notice about this primary source? What can we learn about this time in history and this topic by this photo? We notice the clothing, the hats and boots. Early Grand Canyon mule riders, photo courtesy of Klein Library, Northern Arizona University. It doesn't look very easy to get down into the lower levels of the Grand Canyon. And I noticed that the men and women are dressed very nicely. It's a little different than what you might expect. What else do you notice? Great work. Primary sources like photographs give us great clues to the past. You might be surprised to know that mule rides and hiking are still the only way to get down to the bottom of the Grand Canyon. You may have noticed that when we talked about the different examples of primary sources, that there was a little star next to newspaper articles and letters. Well, those types of primary sources are a little different because it depends on if it was then or now, and if it's fact or opinion. Let's take a look at this newspaper article right here. It was from Sunday, April 11th, 1909, the New York Tribune. John Burroughs, guided by John Muir, sees in reality the dream of 40 years. And the picture is these 2 men standing, gazing, looking onto the Grand Canyon. Look at the date. When did the event happen? This article was written in 1909, about 1909. we would consider this a primary source because it is a newspaper article about the time in history written at that time in history. Both primary and secondary sources help us better understand a time in history from accounts from those that were there or from artifacts from the time period. But primary sources versus secondary sources, what's the difference? Here are two sources I could use if I were researching Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. This first source on the left-hand side is from the New York Times. It's from 1968. It was the day Martin Luther King Jr. was killed in Memphis. You'll notice there's a map, first-hand accounts from officers. And this was the newspaper from the very next day. This is a primary source. It has first-hand accounts, and it gives information about an event that's happening during that time period. Now, when we look over to the right, still the New York Times, an article from 2018 discussing 50 years after Dr. Martin Luther King's death, how he still provides lessons for us today. This is what we would consider a secondary source. Both newspaper articles, one's primary, one's secondary. Take a moment to discuss this, or jot down your thoughts on a piece of paper. Take a look around your home or your classroom. What sources do you see? Are they primary sources? Is it first-hand information? Or are they secondary sources? Now it's your turn. Every time you take a photo, you're creating a primary source. Let's create a primary source for this time in history. Primary sources like photographs give us clues as to what life was like during that period of time in history. Let's make our own. We are in a pretty incredible point in history. Let's document it. Let's create our own primary source. Open a Google Slides. Just click the Chrome ball at the bottom of your screen, click New, and click Slides. In Google Slides, you just need to click Insert, Image, and Camera, and you can make your own primary source of the year 2021. What a year it's been. Insert, Image, Camera, and you will be able to take your own photo to make your own primary source. Insert, Image, Camera. Give it a try.